I'm Anna,
I'm Jessica.
and this is the Paranoia Pair.
I made it. Hi. Better late than never. I am free from the clutches. That is a 6-hour docu-series that I have turned into 20 pages of notes for a podcast episode that I will be putting out shortly. Didn't realize how long I had made it, so I threw this together. I seen it on an episode of I Almost Got Away with It and thought, this is exactly the kind of insanity that belongs on a podcast. So here we are. Today, we are talking about the murder of Betsy Crouch. So, Betsy and Joe Crouch were high school sweethearts. They married when she was 16 years old and Joe was 18. So we're already off to a questionable start. She worked as a medical receptionist after their two children, Teresa and Jay, were both in school. Joe created a successful mortgage and loan company in Memphis after their children grew up and moved out on their own. Betsy and Joe explored some different hobbies with their newly acquired free time. Joe loved golfing and cars, and then he discovered karaoke, and he was obsessed with it. He and Betsy would go out 4 nights a week and sing all over Memphis. He actually wasn't too bad at it either. He was pretty good. He would also tip well, so he was given quite a bit of stage time. His favorite songs were You Were Always on My Mind and Stand By Me, and the ever so patriotic Amazing Grace. Betsy wasn't as good of a singer, but she tried, and that's all that matters. I feel like in karaoke, you don't have to be good. You just have to give the right vibes. Joe also found other hobbies: gambling and sex workers. He had a pretty bad gambling addiction, and he was hiding it from his family. There was about 8 to 9 casinos that had opened up within a 30-minute drive from his office in Mississippi, which made matters worse. In May of 2001, Joe's addiction began catching up with him. He's been writing bad checks and cashing them, and now he has written a total of $80,000 worth of bad checks. I don't even know how they allowed that to happen, but he wasn't only losing money at the casino. He was also losing about $100 per hole on golf matches with his friends. I would venture to say Joe was probably better at karaoke than golf. On June 20th, 2001, after losing $18,000 at the casino, just in that night, I can't even comprehend. So after losing $18,000 at the casino that night and not being able to get more money from the ATM, Joe decides to go home to Tennessee. But when he gets home, he has a letter from the U.S. attorney saying he's going to be charged with bank fraud. Joe knows he's probably going to go to jail, and the house and cars were going to be taken for collateral, and his wife is going to be left with nothing. So Joe confronts Betsy and tells her the truth. She starts to panic and begins freaking out, like any sane person would do after being told their spouse is going to jail for writing almost $85,000 in bad checks and everything is going to be taken. But Joe comes to the conclusion that Betsy would be better off dead. He was too shamed and embarrassed to face her and the consequences of his own actions. 3 days later, on June 23rd, The couple takes a trip to Mississippi. They met friends at a karaoke club called the Cotton Gin. This couple really loves karaoke, and it's basically a part of their lifestyle. Special occasion, they would rent a karaoke machine. Halloween party, karaoke machine. For Joe's last song of the night, he called Betsy on stage during his performance of Always on My Mind, and this is something he always did. Betsy hugged her husband and rested her head on his shoulder while he sang. And on June 24th, 2001, Joe was unable to sleep. So, what better to do to pass the time than to plan your wife's murder? By the morning, Joe knew exactly what he was going to do. He sits up, grabs his .25 caliber handgun out of his nightstand, and walked over to Betsy's side of the bed. He placed a pillow on her head and pressed the barrel of the gun against it and shot her. Joe didn't really plan for what to do after. He was expecting to be picked up by law enforcement at any moment, so he hurries and packs up the car. The car he packs is actually Betsy's brand new car. He takes her brand new golf clubs that were in the back of her car and instead puts his. So he's not leaving without his golf clubs. He really has his priorities straight. Allegedly, he also met up with a call girl that he had been having an affair with for a while named Dee Dee before he left. I don't exactly want to know what they were doing after he picked her up, but I guess he just needed to see her one last time. Before leaving town, he also stops at his office and writes a letter to his children to explain why he killed their mother. In the letter, he wrote that Betsy was killed in her sleep so she didn't suffer. He says that he killed Betsy because he loved her, and he, in a way, put her out of her misery so she didn't have to deal with Joe's mess he created. He then mails the letters before leaving city limits and calls their daughter's husband Bobby. He wants to confess the crime to someone so his and Betsy's children do not find their mother's body. He tells Bobby that at 5 o'clock in the morning, he shot and killed Betsy. He tells Bobby he wants him to be the one to call the police and to tell Joe's two kids, Teresa and Jay. Bobby starts freaking out and is yelling at Joe. And Joe tells him that this is the last time he will ever hear from him, and then he throws the phone out the window. Bobby calls Teresa and Jay to break the news to them, and then he calls 911. At the scene of the murder, police ask Teresa and Jay some questions. They both are in a total state of shock. Inside the house, investigators are collecting evidence and see that Betsy was laying on her back in bed and she had been shot 3 times in the head and once in the heart. Local police are notified that Joe Crouch is armed and on the run, and a bolo is sent out of Joe's description and the car he's driving. After driving for 200 miles, Joe stops at a hotel in Nashville to rest. And when you check into a hotel, you have to register your name. So Joe comes up with a fake name, Jay Nelson. And this is the name that he goes by from now on among everybody he meets. He also creates a new backstory. He is now Jay Nelson, a retired widower from North Mississippi who is also a successful businessman who decided to extend his vacation time. He picked the name Jay Nelson because Jay is his son's name, and Willie Nelson sings his favorite song to sing in karaoke. After checking in, he goes on a walk to hopefully clear his mind. And do we want to guess what he found? A karaoke bar. So, Expecting to be captured at any time, he decides to go in and at least enjoy his freedom while he can. This man literally just killed his wife like 12 hours earlier, and he is now at a bar singing karaoke and getting frisky with a woman. The next day, he drives to Marietta, Georgia, which is a little over 200 miles from Nashville, and he is terrified that the cops are catching up to him. Every time he passes a state highway patrol, he worries. He then starts to worry about his next problem, money. Joe can't access any of his accounts because he's bankrupt. Put a Monopoly joke in there. Before he left, though, he took a few credit cards from his wife's wallet. She had access to accounts that he didn't. And this is where he makes his first mistake. He stopped at an ATM outside of a bank in Marietta. And when he put his wife's card in it, the machine said he needed to go inside the bank and to speak with the manager. Joe realizes he just gave his location away to police. So he runs to his car and he starts driving to Jacksonville. He has just $25 and his car is almost on empty. And for some reason, the ATM hit never turns up for police. Joe doesn't know that though. He's in full panic mode and he ends up stealing a Florida license plate and puts it on his car. He then sets out to find a place to rob. He looks for stores that only have one employee and no customers. And he ends up spotting a little convenience store. And he watches it for a little bit, trying to find the perfect time to go in. When Joe goes into the store, he walks around and double checks that there are no other customers. When he sees the coast is clear, he goes up to the employee and pulls out his gun. He tells the man that he seems like a really nice young man and that his life wasn't worth ending for someone else's money. Then he asked if there was any more money in the store, and there just so happened to be another cash register on the other end of the counter, and he ends up getting money from that cash register too. Joe then takes the employee to the bathroom. He then tells him to lay down on the floor and to count to 500. Joe shuts the door and goes to his car and leaves. He gets on the highway. And he only ended up getting $300 from this little convenience store. He's feeling a rush of adrenaline though, and he's happy that he can at least survive for a few more days. He still has no plan to avoid being caught. He starts driving south and ends up in Daytona at about 11 o'clock. When he gets there, he comes to the decision that he's just going to stay here. He can easily fit in with the 5 million other old white guys there. But back in Memphis, the trail to finding Joe is getting cold. All they know is that he left town. They have an arrest warrant out for him on first-degree murder, and the homicide unit also puts out a wanted poster. They distributed them all over the country, specifically targeting big gambling destinations like Atlantic City, New Jersey, Las Vegas, anywhere in Nevada. Basically, they're a huge gambling state. As well as New Orleans and Louisiana, and a few other resort areas and cruise lines. Joe ends up finding a cheap condo and pays for it in cash in Daytona Beach. So he's living pretty comfortably for a man who doesn't deserve it. He spends most of his days golfing terribly, and he spends his nights doing karaoke. He showed up so much that local regulars knew him by his alias Jay. He continues to tip well and be friendly, but again comes a problem. Money. Joe has no income. He can't get a real job because Jay Nelson doesn't actually exist. Golf, karaoke, food, and lodging none of this is cheap. I I don't know why he couldn't have picked up a cheaper hobby like making origami or something. But once again, Joe turns to robbery. He starts hitting small stores like convenience shops, boutique markets, anywhere with a single employee working alone. He watches for a few minutes and waits for the place to empty out. Then he walks in with a gun. He tells the clerks their lives aren't worth the money, takes the cash, and he usually locks them in the bathroom before running out the door. And this works for him. He's hopping from city to city across Florida, robbing places, and then going right back to karaoke bars. From June to November, he commits over 30 armed robberies. I guess he starts feeling homesick because in November he decides that he's going to reach out to his children one last time. He doesn't want to give away his location by having them postmarked in Daytona, so he drives to New Orleans to mail them out. He ends up giving Jay power of attorney for the business that he created, which he bankrupted before he left. Because I guess nothing says I love you, son, like passing the keys to a company you've already lit on fire. He tells his children that he loves them, and when they get the letters, they immediately give them to Memphis police. The police get the surveillance footage from the post office in New Orleans, and they do have the help of the federal government to assist them with their search for Joe. But unfortunately, the footage doesn't give them enough information about where he's hiding or where he's going. So the case goes cold again, and Joe goes back to Florida. He soon finds the small robberies he's committing is not enough. He needs bigger targets, like a bank. He was looking for a regional bank that would only have about 4 employees and only have women working there. And this is because the women would be more compliant, whereas men would feel this obligation to stop the robbery and protect the women. Basically, what he was worried about was having someone else fight back, and in turn, he would either get killed or be caught. December 5th, 2001, Joe had found the perfect bank. He drives 60 miles to Orlando, hoping that it's far enough away that media coverage won't be as prominent on the Daytona news channels. When he gets there, he spends about an hour scoping it out, and at 11 o'clock, he sees a female employee leaving for lunch. And this is when he makes his way inside, but there's security cameras that are getting a pretty clear shot of the bank. He's already at the point of no return though, and he calmly walks up to the teller and tells her to give him the money and to not mess around or he will shoot her. He's not using his .25 caliber pistol. He's upgraded to a .38 special. I did have to Google what was special about this gun. Apparently, it's the cartridge. It just means that it's more powerful than other .38 caliber models, and there's not as much recoil. So Joe walks the employees behind the counter and they open the money drawer. Working in the past with money in his business actually helps him though, because he knows about the die packs and he knows how to look for them. He finds a stack of money with a die pack and he tosses it to the side. And he's moving quickly, trying not to get caught by the police or the employee who might be returning soon from lunch. He moves the women to the bathroom and tells them to count to 300. He hurries back to his car and drives home to his condo in Daytona, and he counts his money. He has made off with $9,000. He then turns on the news and he is shocked to find them covering the robbery that he did in Orlando. If any of his neighbors see it and are able to identify him, he's done for. He stays up late and turns on the late night news, and he's happy to see that they didn't repeat the story from earlier about the bank robbery. And he's pretty sure that he's in the clear now. To celebrate, he called a sex worker, which apparently is something he did after most successful robberies. I could have lived my life not knowing this, but if I had to know, so do you. You're welcome. We are suffering together. To keep up with his backstory for his alias, he told friends that he needed to go back and help his son with the family business in Memphis. But what he was really doing was scouting places to rob, commit the robbery, and when he returned to Daytona, he would go out on gambling cruises and to karaoke bars. April 2002, he robs another bank for $12,000, and June 2002, he robs a Jacksonville bank for $14,000. On August 28th, 2002, Joe drives 170 miles to Dunedin, Florida. He decides on a target, Crown Bank, and this time he decided the cash drawers were not enough for him. He tells the bank manager that she needs to show him the reserve cash in 30 seconds or he is going to shoot the teller. He knows the vault is where the majority of the money is, and inside of it, there's a safe that has something like a shoebox in it, and that's where they keep the reserve cash. When he takes the women to the bathroom to lock them in, he runs into an issue. There's no handles on the bathroom door. It just swings open and closed. So he tells the women if any of them move, he will shoot them. He instructs them to lay down, and he shuts the door and runs to his car. But when the women hear the front door close to the bank, they come out of the bathroom and call the police. When he's leaving the bank parking lot, the police are already on their way. He sees them coming from 3 different directions, and Joe truly thinks that this is it. It's over for him. But the police go around him and go to the bank. He speeds off and finds a safe place to pull over and count his money. He had escaped with over $40,000. He returns to Daytona and again treats himself to his favorite activities: golf, gambling, and karaoke. Joe sends out a letter dated Christmas 2002 to Teresa and Jay, and it reads, "Dear Teresa and Jay, I am enclosing 2 karaoke CDs that I have made. You'll probably want to throw them away. If so, that's okay too. I would understand. Thought you might want to keep them just to have. There's nothing on them that would give any clues as to how they were made, where they were made, etc. Who knows, maybe my grandson will enjoy them someday." And the CDs had Joe singing on them. One was his favorite song, Stand By Me, and the other one was Cryin'. In February 2003, a couple who were friends of Joe's learn the truth about who he is. They go out to one of their favorite karaoke bars in the area, and someone they know comes running up to them with a wanted poster, and Joe's face is on it. A new episode of America's Most Wanted aired a segment about Joe Crouch, and he had seen it. The couple cannot believe it. They call police and tell them his address in Daytona Beach. Local police immediately work with the FBI and start planning a raid on Joe's condo. And after this episode of America's Most Wanted aired, police received over 50 sightings of Joe at casinos and karaoke bars. One woman recalled meeting Joe at a karaoke bar. He told her that he was a big gambler and had asked her out on a date to a casino sometime. Joe had introduced himself as Leroy, and Teresa says that this is how she knew that it was her father because his middle name is Leroy. Another tip came from a karaoke DJ. He said that the man filled out 15 slips of paper with his name and what song he wanted to sing, and he asked the DJ to to hold on to the extras because he would be coming back and he would want to sing that song. Teresa said that this is something her father always did. He would always sing the same songs and he hated filling out the slips of paper more than once. March 16th, 2003, Joe is in his condo when something catches his attention. Across the street is a parked police car, and it looks like there's nobody in it. He decides that he's just gonna stay home and watch TV. At midnight, the SWAT team move into action. They surround the exits and throw a flash grenade into Joe's apartment. The explosion wakes him up, and when he wakes up, he sees smoke and he hears yelling, and he immediately thinks the building is on fire and that the men yelling are firefighters. But then he gets tackled to the ground, and both Joe and the policeman who tackles him land on the glass top coffee table and it breaks. After 21 months, Joe is finally in custody. The police go through Joe's condo and they were surprised because the police were not aware that Joe was committing all of these robberies. They found a briefcase with 2 notepads that had details of 40 robberies that Joe had committed. They also found guns, wigs, credit cards, fake license plates, and a homemade karaoke CD. When asked why he kept a list of the robberies, he said that he was getting old. He wanted to keep track so he didn't rob the same place twice and get caught, and so he could avoid the places he had robbed so he did not get recognized. In total, Joe had stolen $150,000. Joe is then sent back to Tennessee to be charged with Betsy's murder. He pleads guilty and chooses not to have a trial. He claims he didn't want to have a trial because he didn't want to put any of his family in any more stress, but officers believe that he probably just didn't want the death penalty. And Joe is sentenced to a minimum of 51 years at a max security state penitentiary, and he is not eligible for parole until he is 115 years old in 2060. I was a little worried that he wasn't going to get the time that he deserves after hearing that he pled guilty, because a lot of times when people plead guilty, they'll get like 15 years. Or like with Pamela Pitts, Shelley Harmon pled guilty and only got 20 years in prison. Anywho, he murdered his wife of 40 years. He couldn't have taken his own life. No, because I don't think they have gambling and karaoke in hell. And that's all I have, guys. This is getting uploaded late, but it's gotta be Friday at 3 a.m. somewhere, right?
Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Paranoia Pair Pod. And we will see you next Friday.
Stay spooky.